today we're going to be working inside of Luminar Neo in order to select eyes so we can apply adjustments to just the eyes. If you'd like to pick up Luminar Neo and save a little bit of money in the process, consider using the coupon code and affiliate link in the description box below. I do make a small commission from everyone who uses it, but it's at no extra charge to you. It's a win-win. Now let's jump into Luminar Neo. Here we are inside of Luminar Neo, and you can see that we have a photo where the eyes are pretty much front and center. And so this is a prime candidate for selecting eyes and making adjustments to them. And I do want to be clear that you should do this tastefully. Don't make eyes look unnatural, all right? However, if you need to do some corrections or retouching to the eyes, that's where this technique really does come in handy. So what I'm going to demonstrate with is just a develop module or a develop filter. So I'll come over here. I have it in my favorites. Yours may actually be under essentials because that's where it is by default. But for me, I have it under favorites. And so I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to activate. And then I'm just going to increase the exposure. This is just for simple demonstration purposes. Now, obviously, right now, it's going over the entire photo, and we only want it in the person's eyes. And so this is where masking comes into play. At the top, we have adjustments and masking. If I click on masking, you'll get a few options. Now, there are a number of ways that you could select the eyes. You could use a brush tool, you could use a radial gradient, but today, and for this image, it really does work well, we're going to use the object select mask. And so if I click this, it thinks for a very little while. Depending on your image, it may think a little bit longer, but once it's done, if you hover over the image, you get this crosshair. Now, when I stop over the eye, you'll notice that it turns red. And that's just telling me, hey, if you click here, it's going to select this area. And so I do want to select that area. I'm going to click there. And then it turns to a brighter, more vibrant red, which means that you have it selected. Now, if I come over to the second eye, I can do the same thing. Once they're both vibrantly red, that means that I've already selected the area. All I have to do now is come over here to the develop module again and click the back arrow on object select. This brings me back to my masking tools. And right away, you can see the effect that the exposure has actually done on this particular image. Now, that doesn't look very natural, and I'm breaking my rule. And so we should come into adjustments and probably pull this exposure down. Now, one of the things that you typically want to do with eyes is brighten them up. And the way that I like to brighten up eyes is either using a mid-tone slider, or in situations like this where I don't have access to a mid-tone slider, I can use the shadow slider to increase the shadows. Now, if that doesn't work, and inside of Luminar Neo, we have access to the curves module. And midtones are right here in the center of this curve. And so if I reset all of these just by double clicking, and when I say these, I mean exposure and shadows, I can come here to the middle of this curve module, and I can just go ahead and pull this right on up. And you can see how it naturally brightens the eyes. It's not about overdoing it. Now, in some cases, you may only want to work with the iris and not the pupil, all right? The iris is the part of the eye with all of the color and the part of the eye that is, quite frankly, the most interesting. Well, if that's the only part that you want to work with, then you have to remove the pupil. Inside of Luminar Neo, what you have to do is come back to the masking, and then you'll grab a brush tool. All right. And so when you have the brush, you want to set it to erase, and then you'll bring it right over the eye, and you'll use the bracket keys that are right above your enter or return key on your keyboard. And using the left bracket, you can make your brush smaller. And so my recommendation is to make your brush really, really small. And then for the softness, which is the equivalent of feather from most photo editing applications, you want to pull this down. I recommend somewhere around like 20. You don't need it completely zero, but you want this to be a relatively fast fall off and then blends in to the rest of the edit. All right. This is how you keep that mask looking as natural as possible. And so with the brush made just about the same size, and it looks like I may need to pull up on the feather just a bit there and pull my brush size down. I want to go about 24. I think that that's going to be just about right. You'll have to do this for yourself. And then the last setting for the brush, which I didn't cover, is the strength setting. Keep that at 100% because we want to completely erase everything from the pupil. And so if I click there one time, I've now cut a hole in the pupil and then, or in the mask, protecting the pupil. So it's not getting this adjustment. And so if I come back to my brush settings and click the back arrow on brush, come down to mask actions, I can click on show mask and you can see I have red around the iris, but the pupil no longer has that red indication showing that that area has been selected. And so any adjustment that I make to this particular mask is only going to go into that area. And so that's the benefit of having the capability of masking things in like this. And so if I show you this effect turned off, where the eyes are just a little bit darker and they could stand to be just a tad bit brighter. And then this is with it on and they are a little bit brighter. Now, I know that Luminar Neo has some professional retouching tools, and so we're going to take some time to look at those right now. But I wanted to showcase how you could select the eyes if you wanted to do manual adjustments like I was doing here using the curve adjustment tool. You could also come in here and work with the color if you wanted to saturate just that little iris section or maybe increase some vibrance. There could be a number of reasons that you want to work with the eyes. Now, let's take a look at the professional retouching tools that Luminar Neo has in order to edit the eyes. I have already reset the photo and I've collapsed a few of the windows or categories on the right side here. So that way we can get to the portrait section and we're going to come to Face AI. I just wanted to make this easy to follow along and give some screen real estate here. And so if I click here, you'll notice that I get a few options. The benefit of using Face AI is you don't have to apply a mask in order to get the effect into the place, because Luminar Neo is already identifying those items and it's under the hood of this particular filter. And so all you have to do is come over here to the eyes section, and then you'll notice that we have a few options. Now, we're not going to go in detail over all of these options. I just kind of want to show you how you can start to manipulate or modify eyes. Again, use this with caution and make the person look as natural as they possibly can. They should look enhanced and retouched, but not overly done or overly manipulated to a point that they don't look like themselves. All right. Take this with a grain of salt and use this with caution. And so with that being said, the first option here is the iris. Now that's what we were editing before. If I click this drop down, you'll notice that we have a few different colors here. And so let's say I wanted to make this lady's eyes blue. I can click the blue option and now her iris is blue. You'll also notice that we have this iris visibility. And so if I pull this all the way down, think of this as like an opacity slider where it kind of blends with the original, but the more you pull this up, the more it overpowers the original. So now her eyes are just purely blue. They don't look as natural as it should. And so that's something to keep in mind. But we're going to leave them here because it stands out. It makes it a little bit easier for us to figure out what's going on. The next option is iris flare, and this just gives like a little bit of a catch light down at the bottom of the eye. You can use this or not use this. It just depends on what the lighting looks like in your overall photo. So just keep that in mind when working with this. And then we also have the enlarge eyes. So if the eyes are just a little too small in the frame and you want to make them a little bit larger, you can definitely size them up just a bit here, and it looks relatively natural, but then it makes the face look a little less proportionate. And so be careful with the way that you work with this. And then, of course, if the whites of the eyes need a little bit of adjustment, you can definitely pull up on the whites of the eyes. Going too far makes them look extremely fake and unrealistic. And so if you're just getting into retouching portraits, a little goes a long way. All right. And so doing something like 19 is probably going to be natural. Like, the goal here is to make the person look a little bit nicer, more presentable, but not so retouched that they're unrecognizable, or when they meet someone in person, they're like, man, you do not look like your photos. That is a terrible compliment as a person to get, and you just don't want that for your clients if you're doing this for client work. All right. And so we'll go ahead and pull down the eye whitening. Now, the eye enhancer is actually kind of cool because it throws in this false catch light. And I mean, it's not entirely false because the original does have that highlight in there. And so you definitely want to pay attention to that. And what it's doing is it's giving just a little bit more push to that catch light that's in the photo. And so I really like that particular aspect of this tool. I typically use the eye enhancer whenever I have a close-up portrait similar to this. And so that's something I would recommend. We'll go ahead and pull that down so that way we can see the original. And then red eye removal. Let me know in the comment section, who's still getting red eyes in their photos? I mean, I guess if you're using a flash, you might be at risk of getting red eye, but I have not had to remove red eye like issues in any of my portraits for a very long time. I feel like that was something that was a thing in like the early 2010s, if you will, but now I just don't experience that. So let me know if you experience that. Then, she does have a few dark circles here. And so by removing or pulling up on this slider to remove the dark circles under the eye, it just lightens up that area and makes her skin and her overall appearance look a little bit more refreshed. That's all. And again, you don't want to overdo this when you are editing a picture of a person. They're trusting you to make them look presentable, but not fake. Unless, of course, they ask for that. Then, by all means, go overboard. And then the last one here is eyebrow enhance. And if you pull this all the way up, well, you get access to the eyebrows. Now, of course, this video was really more focused on adjusting the eyes. And one of the cool things that I enjoy about using Luminar Neo is this particular feature here inside of Face AI. Being able to enhance a portrait really quickly without having to apply masks is where I think the power of using a software like Luminar Neo really does come in. And so if that's something you're interested in, then by all means consider using the coupon code and the affiliate link down in the description box below. So that way you could save some money and help out the channel at the same time, because I do make a small commission from everyone who uses it. Now, if you want to learn how to use Luminar Neo and get a little bit faster of working in the software, consider signing up for a training call with me. A link for that can be found in the description box below, and I'll help you learn how to use the software in a realistic way that fits your workflow and your overall needs. So if that's something you're interested in, consider signing up for a training call. I want to know what you're doing inside of Luminar Neo when it comes to portraits, enhancing eyes, where your stance is. So leave a comment in the comment section. Until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.